Welcome to Testing Advices. In previous video, we have learned about browser selection and also saw its execution on different browser. But recently, new driver updates for Firefox and IE has been available. So I have updated the changes, in my code as well as uploaded the same in course lesson as well. So please guys make sure you have also updated the code. Now in this tutorial, what we are going to do, we are going to start with a WebDriver action. So first, under this utilities package, we are going to create a new class called WebdriverActions. Now on a global level, what we are going to do, we have created this base steps class. So let's create the object for the base step. And create the object for WebDriver and initialize the value. So let's import. Now the next thing what we are going to do, first we need to create a constructor. So constructor for this class. So whenever the execution will enter into this WebDriver action class, so before executing any of the method present inside this class, it will always call the constructor first. So whatever actions we want that to be executed before any method, so that is why we will create the constructor. And how to create constructor? You need to enter the class name, public. This is the class name, WebdriverActions. And this dot WebDriver is equal to object of the base step bs dot get driver. So as we have learned in the last lesson, from this class, it will simply return out this WebDriver. So the latest instance of that we want that to start with. So that is why we are making sure that we have the latest instance of the WebDriver. After that, let us define public WebDriver get driver instance. So we are creating this method to simply return the WebDriver instance. Now the next thing is we have this HiddenSteps class. So what we are going to do, first let me remove all this because we have already created these hooks in before. Only after hook is remaining, that we will look into it later on. So now in this HiddenSteps class, first we have this WebDriverActions. So after the base step, the instance of the will be passed on to this WebDriverActions, and after that we want that to be entered into HiddenSteps. So let's WebDriverActions and its object will call it as driverActions. Is equal to, will initialize with null value. Let's import that WebDriverActions. So that we have imported. Now again, similarly, the way we have created a default constructor here. In the same fashion, we are going to create a default constructor for this class. So default constructor for the current class. So how to create default constructor? Use the class name. Okay, so class name is HiddenSteps. So that is it for the HiddenSteps. Now, if you guys observe, so the first thing, okay, so if you observe, we need to launch the browser URL, okay, but in this constant class, okay, so we have already declared a variable, okay, and here we are going to enter that particular URL. So for example, let's say, let me copy this, paste inside this, make my trip. Okay, now in WebdriverActions we need to create a method for this. What we are going to do, we are going to create a method of URL launch. Okay, and I will create a parameterized method which will launch the URL. So navigate to URL, in which we are going to pass the URL. So that is why we are creating this parameterized method, and it will return out that URL basically. So WebDriver dot navigate to, so as you can see, this function is available to launch the URL, and let's use this. Okay, so whatever we are going to insert into this particular parameter, so it will simply navigate to that particular value. Okay, now we need to use this. So we have created this method, now we need to use this. So how to use that? So as we need to access the method inside this WebdriverActions class, so we have created its object driverActions. So let's use this driverActions dot, and we have created this method navigate to URL. Okay, and within this URL we can go and straight away enter this URL. Okay, but as you are aware, here we have already created a variable, we have defined this variable. So let's use this. Okay, so how to use that? Constants dot web URL. So as you can see, it shows the suggestion. Okay, so now what will happen? First, after the main runner execution starts, okay, so it will comes to this base step where it will have the latest WebDriver instance. That means it will have the browser selected. After that, what will happen? It will then go to this WebdriverActions class. Okay, then again we are going to confirm that we have the latest browser instance. After that, it will go to HiddenSteps. Okay, it will call this default constructor where we are trying to initialize this WebdriverActions class. Okay, after that it will enter this first method where it will execute this line of code. So it says driverActions.navigate to URL. Okay, so if I simply press the control button, okay, and see the implementation, so see it redirects to this method where this method what actually executes, what actually returns out WebDriver.navigate.to-URL. Okay, so here what URL we are trying to specify. So if I again press the control and open the implementation, So under the constant class we have this web URL, so it will simply launch this URL. Okay, so this is how it is done. Okay, but in our case, see, whenever we are working on any product, okay, and if the URL is same throughout the project, we can go by this approach. But in our case, if you see, we are using different website. Okay, so for example, if we are going to use this login steps, okay, so this time we need to browse to testing advices, and this approach will not work in that particular case. Okay, so for the same, what we are going to do, we are going to create one more method, public void, I will simply say navigate to URL. Okay, so let the method name remains the same, string URL, and here we will return out the same thing, WebDriver.navigate to URL. Okay, so let me comment out this code for this first approach. Now comment out this code. Okay, so again we are going to use this driver actions dot, we'll use the same method navigate to URL, and this time instead of writing this constant.web URL, what we are going to do, we are going to straight away use this URL. Okay, so if you want to execute this login steps, so that time we'll enter this testing advices URL. Okay, so that will execute that testing advices scenario, and if when we are going to enter this URL, it will execute this particular scenarios. Okay, so now the next thing you can see is we need to retrieve the title. So again we'll go to this WebdriverActions class. Okay, and let's create a method which basically returns out the page title. So we'll say retrieve page title. Okay, so public, okay, and this time instead of creating this void, okay, we want this method to return something. That's why I'm defining it as string. Why? Because the page title will be written in the form of text, and that text will be written inside Java in the form of string. So I have defined it as a string. So get page title. So whenever we are defining this name, okay, so we need to define the name in such a way that it should be understandable, or it should resemble what exactly that method will perform. Get page title, and it will simply return WebDriver dot get title, right? So as you can see, we have this WebDriver dot get title. Select. Okay. Right. Now let's use this in HiddenSteps. So how we are going to use this? So let me comment out this so you can understand what changes we have been doing in this particular class. So let's use driver actions dot. So the method which we have created is get title. So let's see. It shows. So here it is. Inside WebDriver actions we have this get page title. So let's use that. Okay. So if you press Ctrl and see the implementation, it will take you here where it actually returns out the title. Okay. And here we are using this println to print that particular title. Okay. So it is very easy to actually create this methods. Okay, so the next method which we need here, WebDriver.findElement by XPath, and we are trying to click the button. Okay, so let's create a method for button. Click button. So public. Okay, so this time I will not define as a string or int or anything, because here we don't want anything from the browser instance. We just want the action to be performed. Okay, so I'll define it as a void. Okay, and click. We are trying to click the button, so let's say click button. Okay, now WebDriver dot. Now how we actually click the button? So first we go to this WebDriver.findElement by XPath, and inside this we actually enter that particular XPath, and then we click that particular thing. Okay, so the same way we are going to create WebDriver.findElement by .XPath. Okay, inside XPath expression we are actually going to write XPath. Okay, and we are going to click. Okay, so if you observe, it has shown us the error, and what error it is? Create a local variable XPath. So this is not the parameterized method, so we need to define a string where we can use this XPath expression. Okay, so now again go to HiddenSteps and call it as driver actions dot click button. So see, this is the first method it is showing. Use this click button, and inside this we are going to enter this XPath. Okay, now in the third step, what we have? It is trying to enter this LON, and before even doing that, first it is verifying whether that particular element is displayed or not. Okay, so let's start. So let me comment out this, and in WebdriverActions let's create a method for isDisplayed. Verify element is displayed or not, question mark. So for that public boolean, okay, is displayed. String XPath, and it will return, as we are not using void. Okay, so we want this method to return something, whether the value is true or false. So as you can see here, it is defined it as a boolean. Okay, WebDriver.findElement by XPath, and inside this, instead of this XPath expression, we'll use XPath, and rest dot is displayed. Okay, so WebDriver.findElement by dot XPath, inside this XPath expression we'll use this defined variable XPath dot is displayed. Now let's use this. So in HiddenSteps, how we are going to use driver actions dot, we have created method is displayed, right? So this is the first is displayed method inside WebdriverActions. So let's use this, and inside this XPath we are going to put the XPath expression. So XPath expression is here. Copy, paste. Okay, but now if you see the further code is, if the execution of this, or if it returns true, then only it will go and particularly execute the below line of code. So we want this value to be assigned to certain web element. Okay, so here we will store this value inside this multicity row. Okay, so I'm keeping this variable name same, multicity row. Okay, now after this we have this WebDriver.findElement by XPath and .sendKeys. Okay, so now once this statement is true and it enters, we want to create a method which will actually perform the send keys operation. So let's try to create that. So how we are going to create that? Insert inputs. Okay, so public void send input string XPath, and this time again see we need to create two variables here. Okay, so the parameterize method will contain this two variables. Why? Because if you see, first one, what we need to do, we want this XPath. Okay, and then we also need to enter this particular text as well. So for that text will be again in the form of string. So instead of XPath, here I'll define it as an input. Now what we want, WebDriver dot find element by dot XPath, right? And inside this XPath we will have that XPath expression, and then we need to perform the action send keys, and inside send keys we need to have this input, right? Yes, so let's save this. Now let's use that particular method. So driver actions dot, so the method which we have created is send inputs. Okay, send inputs, as you can see. So in this first instead of XPath we need to enter the XPath expression, and in the input we need to actually enter the input, and both are defined as a string. So I'm putting this double quotes. So now we have completed implementation. So let's execute this. Okay, so we have got an exception here, an unexpected error launching Internet Explorer. Okay, so we have selected the browser IE, and the error is protected mode settings are not same for all zones. Enable protected mode must be set to the same value. Okay, so this error is nothing but I have shown this in my previous lesson. Okay, so we need to go to tools, internet options. Under the security tab we need to check this for all protector modes. Okay, so apply. Okay, close this. Now let's clear the console and execute. So it has browsed to make my trip. It has clicked on Multicity and enter the LON. Okay, so browser will not be closed as we are yet to write the code for after hook. Okay, so as you can see in the console. Okay, now here we have used the so we are going to use the other approach as well. So let me comment out this and uncomment the above line of code. Now for this we have created these two methods here. Okay, so let me uncomment this, and in the constant, if you want to go by this approach, copy this. Okay, let me save, and in the hidden steps, okay, so first what will happen, from the main runner, okay, it will read this tag, okay, and then it will go to this base step as we are using this before hook. Okay, so from this it will go to this constant to see this browser and URL selection. So after this it will return out this WebDriver instance to this WebdriverActions. Then it will go back to this hidden steps, okay, and from this hidden steps, okay, it will see which URL needs to be launched. Okay, now let's again, and this time instead of let's go for Firefox. Okay, save, run as test engine. So Firefox browser is launched. It has clicked on Multicity and LON is entered. So let's close this. Okay, so in this video tutorial we have seen like this both the approaches. Okay, so one way is we can globalize the parameter in this constant class, in which if we have the same URL, okay, to play with for the different scenario, we can go by this approach. But as we have created it different step definitions file where we are launching the different URLs, so in that particular thing we need to go by this second approach. Okay, so let me uncomment this, and what we are going to do in this base steps, we are going to perform certain changes. Okay, so first let me remove this constant web URL from here. Save, and again comment out this, and as we are not using this to parameterize method, so let's save this. So the few changes which I have done, I have added this Firefox option. So the way we have added for the Chrome options, in the similar way I have added this code for the Firefox option. So you can go by this as well, and you can also go for this. But when you go for this approach, in the console window you will be asked to use this Firefox option instead of this desired capabilities. Okay, and there is no changes for the Chrome. And in the I have added one more step to accept this, okay, SSS certificate. And the one change which we have done is in the tool internet options, we have selected this protected mode, okay, for all the options. Okay, one more setting that you might want to do is the zoom setting. Okay, so set the zoom setting to 100. Okay, that one more change you need to do. Okay, now so we are done this code execution for this hidden steps on Internet Explorer as well as on Firefox browser. Okay, now in the next video what we are going to do, we will try to implement the same for this login steps. Thanks for watching the video.